Alright, so I got some good news and I got some bad news. Let's start with the bad. The bad news is I will not be reviewing any more Game of Thrones because, as I kind of proved unintentionally with last week's review, I'm not qualified to review these since I can't remember half the characters' names. So, no more Game of Thrones unless there's something like a red wedding or purple wedding incident, then that's something that I just have to talk about. I'm not doing Game of Thrones anymore, but what I am going to do, and this is the good news, is I'm going to give you a review of a show that I do know about, that I know the characters of, and oh my god, I'm just freaking out right now. I'm just talking about Marvel's Daredevil. Holy shit, this thing is awesome. If you don't know who the character of Daredevil is, he is a vigilante by night, but by day he's a lawyer named Matt Murdock, who as a young boy was blinded due to some chemicals, which allowed his other senses to just spike up. Like, it allows him to see things around him without actually physically seeing using eyes. But to the rest of the world, he appears blind. This series follows him and his best friend Foggy Nelson, who decide to go into law, but they're pretty much starting out. They have a little office in Hell's Kitchen, New York, which it's very empty. They don't get that many clients. Like, it almost is like they don't have a shot. In fact, the main reason Foggy gives to why they want to become lawyers, or at least for him, is they want to make a lot of money. At least that's what Foggy says. However, one day they get their first client, a woman named Karen Page, who, as they try to help, they discover that she has some sort of connections to a bigger plot that involves a mysterious kingpin figure lurking beneath the depths of Hell's Kitchen. And as the series goes on, things get a lot more intense and I'd say nail-biting. Now, this review is going to contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen Daredevil, just stop the video, go type in netflix.com and watch Daredevil. Now, my first exposure to Daredevil was through the shitty Ben Affleck movie from 2003 that Mark Steven Johnson directed. In my review for X-Men Origins Wolverine, I said that X-Men Origins Wolverine was the worst comic book movie ever made, along with Batman and Robin and Daredevil. So clearly Daredevil is something that I'm just like, bleh. Like, even when I saw it as a kid, I was like, this is kind of crappy. And this was like a point where I was very tolerable of all movies. So Marvel, I think in 2012, ended up getting the rights back. They announced that they were going to do Daredevil again, but through a Netflix series. And I was like, okay, let's see how they work. After they got the rights back to the Hulk, they managed to do the Hulk right in The Incredible Hulk and then perfect him in The Avengers. Let's see how they handle Daredevil. And holy shit, oh my god, this is so awesome. It is like basically going from Batman and Robin to Batman Begins. In fact, on Twitter, I even refer to the show as Batman Begins, but with better action sequences. I'll get into the action detail a little later, but what I mean by it's like Batman Begins is because it's set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Daredevil occupies the same world as Iron Man, the Hulk, Captain America, Star-Lord, and Howard the Duck. How strange is that still? But it's also kind of set in its own world. Hell's Kitchen, it's pretty much the Gotham City of the Marvel Universe, even though Hell's Kitchen is a real place. And Daredevil has always been the Batman for Marvel, how he's this vigilante crime fighter who takes on an identity to scare his enemies, and he won't kill anyone. The tone of this show is very dark, it's very real, but it also doesn't act like The Dark Knight Rises, where it's just like, it's gotta be super depressing, because it's fun, and it has some characteristics that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is well known for, like some of the humor. What's good about this is that the humor doesn't go overboard like it does in some of the Marvel movies, but it's very effective too. And a lot of the humor comes from the character Foggy Nelson, played by Eldon Henson, who I think is really good. In fact, all the cast members do a really good job here. He's the comic relief that I prefer to have in anything, where he cracks jokes, but he's effective also. He's very much dedicated to his job. He's dedicated to those around him. Even when things kind of go to shit between him and Murdoch later in the season. And at points, he can even be a better lawyer than Murdoch himself. I mean, it does kind of help when your eyes physically work. Karen Page, played by Deborah Ann Wool from True Blood, I had a problem with her in the first episode because one of the things that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has established is that they have an entire roster of strong female characters, whether it's strong in the sense that they'll kick your ass or strong in the sense that they're just good characters. And in the first episode, Karen just seemed like that very helpless woman who just... She got annoying to me a little bit, and especially didn't help since Daredevil came in the wake of Agent Carter, which I love. But as the season went on, and Karen decides to work with Nelson and Murdoch, she becomes a strong female character in her own right. She puts her all into this story that she's going after, and even if it gets her in trouble, she will not rest until she has something to prove, which is something I really admire. Charlie Cox is the guy who plays Matt Murdock / Daredevil, and he's really good too. He's very charming as Matt Murdock, but as Daredevil, he's threatening, he nails the fight scenes. I think he just does a good job all around. And the costumes, a lot of people were complaining about the black costume, where it's just a hood that anyone could buy anywhere and make themselves. But I kind of like that because this season acts as a full origin story for Daredevil. I mean, in the last episode, he gets the red costume that we're all familiar with, which is cool. But the black costume works because it shows that this is a Daredevil that's still learning. He's still kind of new to this, and he just kind of gets better as the season goes on. And what I love about the origin, like with the Incredible Hulk, Marvel decided to tell the origin part where he basically got his powers at the beginning of the season, right before the opening credits start, and it just shows that they're going to do the same thing with Spider-Man. Now, before we get into the action scenes, I got to talk about the cast member who steals the whole show, I think. Above Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk is incredible, I think. He, hands down, is the best villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, period. He's very calm, he's smart. He has an episode dedicated to his childhood that makes Fisk a lot more believable and more human. And I haven't seen Age of Ultron yet, but I'm going to assume right now that Ultron does not hold a candle to Fisk, ignoring the fact that Ultron is an AI, but never mind. One of the things that I really like is that Fisk might be calm at some points, but if you cross him, you might as well just be a dead man. Which leads into one of the two best moments in the season. In episode 4, Fisk is really angry at this Russian mobster and basically beats the crap out of him. And then when the guy's almost unconscious, Fisk grabs him, puts him on the car floor, takes the door, and just slams the guy repeatedly. And there's a shot from underneath the car where we see the body just moving back and forth as the door's slamming. We see blood spilling onto the ground. And then we see the body fall with no head. And then I saw that and I'm just like, holy fucking Jesus Christ shit. You do not fuck with Wilson Fisk. Like, if you are next to him and he has a car door, just run, because he's going to decapitate you with a car door. That's one of those moments of violence that kind of puts Game of Thrones to shame, I think, because I don't think I've ever seen something that mind-blowingly violent in anything, even Game of Thrones. But then the other awesome what the fuck moment in this show is in episode 2, and this is where I get into talking about the action sequences. There is a scene, there's a part in this episode where Daredevil has to go in to save this kid that got kidnapped by some gangsters, only to get Daredevil out. And it takes place in a hallway. Daredevil is beating up all these gang members in the hallway, and it's one long, unedited take. The camera follows Daredevil. It's at a distance. It's shot well. The choreography is mind-blowing. And it's just one of those things where it's like, wow, this is amazing. This is like, these guys must have watched The Raid and wanted to do something like that in Daredevil. And even though the rest of the action scenes are good, that one, it's just a standout, but it's in episode 2, which is a bit of a bummer. But It's like a nitpick to have that action scene so early in the season. And that's the kind of action that I like to see in these kinds of movies slash shows. Action-wise, when I said this was Batman Begins, but with better action sequences, Batman Begins is that movie where I point to in terms of poorly shot action sequences, because in that movie, the fight scenes are sloppy, they're edited too close, there's a cut every 3 seconds. It's just almost unwatchable in terms of the fight scenes, but the rest of the movie is good. Daredevil gets it right and shows us some really badass fight choreography that's all real as far as I'm concerned. I doubt the show used CG, but oh my god, I just love this whole show. So I'm gonna give some like closing thoughts before I wrap it up. Daredevil is a really fantastic show. The fight scenes are amazing. The characters are great. The actors do a fantastic job, especially Vincent D'Onofrio, who, this might be a little premature, I think he should get some Emmy recognition. And I think this whole show should be in the running for the Emmys because it is that good. It's a show that I think will appeal to anyone and not just fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or comic fans in general. It is just so good. I'm really excited to see what happens with the future. I know the series got renewed for a second season, but I'm also just as curious to see what they do with Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, all leading into a Defenders miniseries. And given how violent this show is, Marvel has no excuse not to do The Punisher now. Like, they got Daredevil right here, and the level of violence is just so up there that there's no way the Punisher can't be introduced. So after Marvel got the Incredible Hulk and Daredevil right, there's no way they could screw up the Punisher if and when they ever do it. But getting back to the season, for Daredevil Season 1, I'm going to give it the highest rating I have, which is get off your ass and go see it right now. Which is a little odd because this is a Netflix show, so I'm assuming you could just type into your computer Netflix.com and boom, Daredevil's right there. You don't even have to get off your ass. I just love this show. It's in my top 5 of favorite shows. I would say that right now. It's only one season, but I just love this show so much. You just watch it if you haven't, please. And that's my review for Season 1 of Marvel's Daredevil. Leave a comment and tell me what you thought of this season. If you saw it, what did you think? Like, subscribe, and this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.